discussed it over the years. But this year around, inshallah, what we will do is that we will take each juz and we will take a theme of that juz or a verse from that juz that the Imam has recited, and we will give a little summary of that. So today, very briefly, and a short reminder, I want to go back to the very first surah of the Quran, which is Surah Al-Fatiha. Al-Quran, Fatiha al-Quran, Sab'a al-Mathani. That this surah itself is which the Quran it begins with, and it has many names. The mother of the book, the opening of the book, the 7 most often recited verses. There are many names given to it. In Arabic, whenever something is given many names, it means it's something very, very important. And when you say Kitab, the mother of the book, it means this is the heart of the Quran. All the themes and subjects that you'll find in the rest of the Quran can all go back to Surah Al-Fatiha. We don't have time to go through the whole of Fatiha, but the one verse that I would like to remind myself and remind everybody with is the verse إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. In this verse, this very powerful, very short verse, Allah Almighty, He sets out the belief, the iman, the aqidah of every Muslim. And it's very important, this is where we start from. In the إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, that we only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And how do we worship Allah? Is by seeking His aid. As many of the ulama, they say in this ayah, there is ghaya and there is wasila. Meaning we have our goal, which is we worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah has also given us the means. How is it that we establish His tawheed, the oneness of Allah? And that is to seeking His help, al-isti'ana, seeking His help, seeking His mercy, asking things from only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the essence of the life of a Muslim, is that we only worship Allah and we don't worship anything else. Our submission, our bowing, our sujood is only to Allah, not to any idol, not to any human being, not to any system, not to any man-made thing, only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the purity of Islam. On top of that, the Prophet ﷺ said, Ad-du'a wa ibadah, that when you make a dua, this is the essence of your worship. So when we say إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, when we recite this verse, it means we only make dua to Allah. When we ask, we only ask Allah. And this is the fundamental of our aqidah. We don't ask somebody in the grave. We don't ask the prophets. We don't ask the angels. We don't ask anybody. If we want something, we ask Allah. If we seek protection, we seek Allah's protection. If we need rizq, money, children, whatever, who do we ask? We ask Allah. And this is the basis of the essence of the teachings of Islam. And as we're entering into this blessed month, or we've entered into this blessed month of Ramadan, and the Imam recited the verses as well, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That you attain taqwa. And what is taqwa? Taqwa is understanding Allah. Taqwa is bringing yourself closer. The whole purpose of Ramadan is for you to learn who Allah is. Who is Allah? Allah is Ar-Rahman, Allah is Al-Ghafoor, Allah is Al-Sittir, Allah is Ghaffar, Allah is Malik, Allah is Quddus, Allah has all these beautiful names. And this is why the essence of Surah Al-Fatiha is that we, each individuals, we connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the uniqueness of Islam. We don't have any intermediaries. If you've committed a sin, there's no confession box. You don't need to go to somebody and tell them what you've done and then they forgive you. No, you go direct to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You committed a sin, you say astaghfirullah. You want anything, you ask Allah directly. There's nothing in between. And this is the purity, the essence of the teachings of Islam. So I want to just remind myself and remind everybody the importance of tawheed, drawing yourself closer to Allah. And finally, that we recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala huwa al-Khaliq, He is the creator. And you and I, we are the creation. Everything that Allah has created has a purpose. Your phones have a purpose. This building has a purpose. Whatever you have, your computers, your iPads, they all have a purpose. You who is a human being, much more sophisticated, you have a purpose. What is your purpose in this world? We have to ask ourselves this question, reflect. Entering into Ramadan, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me? What is the reason to why I am here? You've been created here to worship Allah Almighty, to recognize Allah Almighty, to bow down to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's not just out of force, but because Allah is the one who's deserving of our worship. Because He is the one who gives us supreme justice, supreme way of living, the best way of living. It comes through Islam. And finally, when somebody dies, what do we say when somebody dies? They say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From Allah we came, and to Allah we're going to go back. Now question, did we choose to come to this dunya? Did any of you choose? Did you fill out a form and come into this world? And do any of you choose to go back to Allah? Do you have a choice? I can go A, B or C? You came from Allah with no choice. You go back to Allah with no choice. But in between, you make the choices. In between, you make the choices, and that will determine whether you will have an eternal life of bliss and peace in Jannah, or you will have a life of punishment and fire in the hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the punishment of the fire.
Ameen.
And I remind myself, remind you,
Ameen.
La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. The Prophet man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. That the person who says La ilaha illallah enters paradise. And that doesn't just mean you say it and you can do whatever you want afterwards and you go Jannah. That means whoever says it and lives according to it. If you live according to it, tawheed, then you're a person, inshallah ta'ala, you will eventually find yourself in the place of paradise. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah next